Good morning, Tottenham fans. Well, Tottenham are getting a few players back, and they managed to have a week's rest before the next game against Man United. Also, got another week's rest before the next game against Ipswich. So, my opinion on this was I'm sure we're going to start seeing higher intensity, front foot football, more chance of rotation, and more chance of getting points on the board. So, with players coming back, with rests in between, no European football, no cup football, unfortunately. I just thought we'd see an improvement in match times, in our match games. So, but what I got back from that was, well, we lost games when we had a full team. And I also got, well, when we play Ange ball, they'll all just get injured again anyway, and we'll be back to square one. Now, in this video, I want to talk about how the media will brainwash you into thinking that way, and how I can give you lots of context and examples of why these narratives are wrong. And hopefully we can have a little debate about it, and hopefully we'll have more understanding on how this works, like how the media want to spread narratives. So the media are very, very clever, very, very clever at spreading narratives or agendas without really no context or no comparison to others. So they will convince you of something that is not fully true and spread the narrative to millions of people listening. Yeah. So most people believe it. The pundits get involved in it as well. And all of a sudden, there is a lie we all believe to be true without questioning it. And when they're big mainstream media, the huge ones and the huge YouTube channels and people like that, and they all jump on this and start spreading it as well, people automatically believe it because they're big channels, which is understandable, and it's not their fault to believe this. But when a small channel like mine questions any of these narratives, then just to be false or needs to be questioned, I get called delusional, etc. Happy clapper, whatever you want to call me. But I have examples of this mainstream media narratives that get pushed out. And I'll give you one, for example. And that's Van de Ven gets multiple hamstring injuries because of Ange ball and the high line, which leads him to have to sprint back more often. Yeah. So firstly, let's talk about that. Van de Ven had hamstring troubles before he even came to Spurs. So just think about that for a little bit of context that the media will not try to push. You'll probably hear it here and there, but you won't hear it a lot. Also, Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Brighton, Bournemouth, Chelsea, and Aston Villa all play high-line football. All of them do. Yeah? And have you noticed that most of the teams I mentioned, other than probably Brighton, all near the top of the Premier League, by the way. So Emery has injuries to 3 centre-backs now, but not one media output saying it's because of Emery's high-line style. Where's the narrative about that, please? Arsenal just lost Havertz, so now they have lost him, Jesus, Martinelli, Saka up front. But their defense is fine playing a high line. So, but there's no narrative saying that they do too much pressing. That's why they're getting injured. And they're getting hamstring injuries, by the way, and muscle injuries. Also, Anthony Gordon has the most sprints in the league this season, but he's fine. He sprints more than any other player, but he's fine. Robinson from Fulham sprints up and down the match. I don't know if you've seen any Fulham games, but Robinson is an outstanding player, which I would love to have at Spurs. But he runs up and down that pitch for 90 minutes, sprints way more than Van de Ven does. He's fine. Even closer to home, Kulu is one of the highest sprinters in the Premier League. Played more games than most players in the Premier League. He's fine. Fingers crossed he stays fine. And for as long as I can remember in the Premier League era, the Premier League's been around, what's been the job of the wing backs? To sprint up and down for the game, like Robinson does. Sprint up and down. Is that being tactically inept, not knowing what you're doing? Why are you making your players sprint so much? You're going to cause injuries. Didn't get none of that when you play wing back system. So what's the job of a box-to-box midfielder? A box-to-box midfielder, which we've always had in the Premier League, sprints forward to try and score goals and sprints back to try and defend goals. That's his job. Lots of sprinting. Nobody's ever questioned that you're tactically inept because you're playing a box-to-box midfielder. What is the job of wingers? Wingers are sprinting up and down the pitch every single game, and we've always had wingers in the Premier League. Look at, even go as far back as Ryan Giggs. The amount of sprinting Ryan Giggs did was insane, but he hardly was missing games, was he? Especially early in his career. There's so many examples of other teams and other players with other systems doing many, many sprints, but the narrative is Ange Ball is the reason that causes injuries, which I solely do not believe, but I do believe high intensity will give you more of a chance of injuries. But how else do you want to play? So, because even low intensity causes injuries. Even teams with low blocks also get injuries, by the way. But that wouldn't be put in the context either. So is it Ange Ball thing, or is it just a football thing in general? That's what you've got to ask yourself. The media will make you believe it's just Ange Ball. Ange Ball is the reason why all the players get injured. It's unsustainable. He's tactically inept. He's out of his depth, blah, blah, blah. It goes on. And on top of all that, Ange Ball style is actually to win the ball back higher up the pitch, which is very, very similar to all those other teams I mentioned that play the high line. They all try to win the ball, especially if you watch Liverpool. The amount of times they turn over the ball in the final third or in the midfield area is insane. And this is what Ange Ball is all about, winning the ball in the front three and in the midfield. So technically, the front three are probably sprinting way more than Van de Ven and Romero are at the back, or whoever else is playing. But that's not seen or put into context either. You know, they're doing many, many sprints to press them. And if this worked, if we did win the ball in the final third or in midfield, that would cause our defenders like Van de Ven not having to sprint back. If we got onto the ball before the opposition midfielder kicked it long over the top, and then Van de Ven obviously has to then sprint back and get the ball. If our midfield stop that before it happens, then he won't have to do as many sprint-ins. So it's not Ange Ball's system that's not working. It's the players not actually getting it to work, because our midfielders are not doing the job they're supposed to be doing at the moment. And I still feel that midfield will be shaken up again in the summer to be more combative and win the ball back a lot quicker than what we are this season. And I really think that will change next season if that is the case, if he keeps his job long enough. So after everything I've said about the Van de Ven, Ange Ball is causing Van de Ven's injuries, do you truly believe Ange is causing this after everything I've just explained? You all want us to act like a big club. Like Tottenham fans want us to act like a big club. So when we are playing like big clubs, like the City, Arsenal, Liverpool, even United to an extent, Aston Villa are up there now, Bournemouth are up there now. They're all playing the high line, high intensity football. All of them are. So when we're playing like that, I get complaints into my channel that we should be more, defensive and more. Yeah, I know, like tactically, yes, we need to, change things at time to time. But the actual Ange Ball, when you've got your full fit squad, does actually work. It really does. When Ange Ball actually works, you do less sprints backwards, and most of your sprints are in the final third, in the opposition half, which is less running, especially for our defenders, which again brings in Van de Ven. But the media does not want to explain any of it like this. They just want to tell you that Ange Ball doesn't work and it can't work in the Premier League. That's what they want you to believe. And all these examples I've just given you proves otherwise, in my opinion. Another narrative is Spurs lost games even with a full squad. Now, I get this a lot. Ange's, and I'll put another narrative in with this, and it all makes sense, trust me. So Ange is out of his depth because this is the best league in the world. Why is this the best league in the world, I hear you ask? Because any team can beat anyone on their day. So when this happens to Spurs, we are all shocked and say things like, we shouldn't lose to Ipswich, we shouldn't lose to Crystal Palace. Fine, we have got better teams than them, but it can happen because we're in the best league in the world. But they all ignore that. We had, like, when we had our full squad, this gets ignored. We were the highest scorers in the league. We had the third best defense in the league. We conceded the least amount of chances in the league. We also dropped points against teams that we dominated. We dominated Newcastle at St James's Park. We should have won that easily. Could have been 3 or 4 up at half time. We played brilliant football and ended up losing that game. And the High Line got blamed for that too. And Leicester, we dominated them and ended up drawing. Not the second game that we lost, the game at the beginning of the season when we drew. We were dropping points at the beginning of the season with a full squad, but were the better side in that match. We were also losing by 1 goal if we did lose, but we were winning by 4 or 5 if we did win. So, you know, when it was working, it was really working, you know. Also, can you tell me a team other than Liverpool this season who haven't dropped points to low opposition? The answer is no, you can't. And I'll give you examples. Arsenal have dropped points to Everton, Fulham and Bournemouth this season. Chelsea have lost to Fulham and Ipswich and drawn with Everton with no injury crisis at the time. City have dropped points to Brentford, Palace and Everton. No agenda on any of those managers that they're out of their depth because they're losing to lower opposition. None. In conclusion to all of this, and if you come back to me with he had injuries at Celtic too, I'm just going to come back to you with if he had injuries at Celtic too, which he did, and I understand that, he still came away with 5 trophies regardless of the injuries. So that makes that even a better. Doesn't that make it even a better achievement? All I'm saying is try not to blindly follow these narratives without a little research into context. Context is in everything. So when we're trying to say Ange is out of his depth, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's got 26 years experience. He does know what he's doing. Just sometimes things don't go your way. But I'm telling you now, watch the difference in these next couple of weeks when we have rest in between games. This will just tell me that we need a bigger squad, which, again, he's only had 18 months to completely change the team completely, which I still think, like, Basuma and Benteke are on their last year of their contracts. So I still think that they are going to be not here next season. I think they will be sold unless they can do what Ange Ball wants, but I don't think they can. And I think that's good. And because they're the senior players, they're going to get more game time than the Bergvalls and the Gray. But I do think that they will be replaced in the summer. If not, then it's going to be the same again next season. But I really think the midfield will be revamped. I still think our forward line is pretty good, apart from we've just had injuries all season to our forward line. We're scoring many, many goals when they were all fit. Many goals. Highest scorers in the league, remember. So I don't blindly follow narratives, especially media narratives. They really want to push an agenda on certain clubs and teams, and Tottenham seem to get a lot of brunt of poor media like Spursy and things like that. The only way we can change that around is to change our mindsets and to say, look, we demand more. We want to win more. We need to win trophies. We're a big club, and we need to get back to that. Anyway. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And come on, you Spurs.